Time for an ASUS rant. A rant about ASUS? Surely not. But yes, it is true. It doesn't happen very often, but this is very much needed. What I'm going to do is I'm going to explain to you what's been going on with the Strix boards, and I'm going to explain to you why it should have been fixed already, and also give you a little idea about what goes on behind the scenes. So, with all brands, every single brand, if I find a problem, what I do is I let them know about it. 9 times out of 10 issues are BIOS. If it's something that's actually broken, like the board might be faulty, you have to let them know anyway, because you need to get another one. But with BIOS, it's 9 times out of 10 what happens. And I'll be frank as well. Normally with the stuff that I would report to ASUS about BIOS, it wouldn't necessarily be something that's affecting performance, but quite often there can be sometimes a weird little glitch. And I let them know and they fix it. It's just the way, I don't know whether other media do it, but that's how I work. I enjoy kind of looking and finding faults. When I do it with the other brands, I let them know, specific things that aren't working, and that might not be turning on properly, or that's a little bit higher than it should be. You do end up becoming like an external part of the dev team, basically, and it's just the way it is. And because of the way that I go about my reviews and look into things like voltages and stuff in such great detail, and I keep notes and screenshots about everything as well. So for argument's sake, if a manufacturer was to say to me, oh no, the VCC IO on that board is normal, I'd literally be able to go to a spreadsheet and go, yeah, no, it's not, because on that board by that brand it's 0.25 lower, and that one it's 0.35. So I keep an eye on all of this stuff, and I let them know, and 9 times out of 10 it will get fixed. Now with this, I actually tested the Strix boards before the Coffee Lake launch, because it was a part of my original plan that these were going to get put live at launch. Now, when you hear me saying about, these should have been live, you're thinking to yourself, well, he's not put the ITX board live, and he's not put this live, and he's not put that live. These were in the plan to have been done. Any of the other ones that just got previews, I've not tested yet. So the ITX board's down here, it's not even been powered on yet. So don't overthink it, but these were meant to have gone live on launch and didn't. These were the only ones that I've tested and didn't go live at launch that should have gone live on launch. And the reason is the load line calibration on them is non-existent. Now what load line calibration is when you put your CPU under load, if you watch CPU-Z, you'll see that you've got the V-core. And if you put it under load, a lot of the time what can happen is that voltage can droop down. Now if you're still running speed step, where your CPU frequency changes a great deal from like 800 megahertz, and then when you put it under load it goes up, it won't really matter too much to you guys, because you're not going to be able to track it properly. What you actually have to do is manually set the volts in the BIOS, so that for argument's sake you put 1.2 volts in, and then when you put it under load you might see it drop off a little bit. And with these boards it does do that a great deal. So at launch I did say to ASUS, it's not right. These boards, the V droop is what we call it, is terrible. And I said to them, it's because load line calibration isn't working. Now there are 7 settings for load line calibration, and it just goes from 1 to 7. I tried all 7, doesn't make any difference whatsoever. It just doesn't work. So I did tell them. Now you're thinking to myself, what difference does it make, Tom? Well, I know my CPU needs 1.26 volts to be able to hold a 5 gigahertz overclock. For me to be able to get either of these boards to actually be supplying 1.26 volts when it's under load, I would actually have to put 1.35 volts in the BIOS, and then it droops the rest of the way down to 1.26. That's basically how bad it is. There's a few other bits and bobs with this as well that I'm not entirely happy about either, because for argument's sake, if you go into the BIOS and you enable XMP, a lot of people aren't going to be checking things like CPU Z and temperatures and stuff like that. But with an 8700K in either of these boards and XMP enabled with the MCE or the multi-core enhancement stuff enabled, you'll be getting 1.3 to 1.4 volts going through your CPU, and you're sat there thinking it's auto, so it's obviously stock. Now, stock isn't the same as auto volts, sadly. Stock volts are manually set and you have to put them in, whereas auto volts, the board can do what it wants, and this is a bit overly aggressive. Like I said, I can get 5 gigahertz of 1.26, yet the board was putting through 1.4 volts at times for 4.7. Now what they do is it doesn't tailor the volts to every CPU. It's just got a blanket kind of like profile in there, and it bangs it up according to that profile. So it doesn't adjust itself to whether you've got a good CPU or a bad CPU. Now I do know this, but I do think that they're being excessive with the volts on this. To the point where I'm like, no, come on. It feels a bit lackluster. It feels a bit like it needed more time on it. Now, the reason why we're having this rant and talking about load line calibration is I did tell them before launch. It's been a little while now. We're over 2 weeks. Now, on Monday, there was a reply back about my statement that load line calibration wasn't working. And the statement basically was how to turn it on. Now, I tested all 7 settings, and so I know it didn't work. I tried multiple things. I put different BIOSes on there because there was one on there when it came, and then they sent another one. So I tried the older one again just to make sure. So I tested lots of things. I also tested both boards in case it was one of them was just a bit duff, and they were both reacting exactly the same way. Loads of V-droop, no load line calibration. But yeah, Asus basically replied with giving me instructions on how to turn it on. Now, a little patronising, do you know what I mean? Yeah, all right, ego, do you know what I mean? Big chip on my shoulder. Why are they telling me how to turn it on? I'd done all that. But really, what that said to me is they hadn't tested it themselves. There was no acknowledgement. There was no, yes, we know it's an issue. There was nothing. It was just he's obviously, not done it properly. Get him to turn it on. Whereas if they'd actually bothered to test it, they would have seen it's an issue. Now, I'm also in the fact that I'm like, surely they wouldn't have done this. I went to talk to an system integrator, which is basically someone that just builds PCs for a living. Well, it was a massive company. And I also went to an e-tailer as well, because I know they'd be doing hands-on with the boards, testing the boards, seeing if they want to put them in their systems. Basically, I went to professionals who build PCs for a living and asked them what they thought of the Strix boards. Didn't mention load line calibration, but they both told me there's masses of V-droop and they don't think that the LLC was working properly, and it had been reported by them to Asus as well. So it's not a one-off thing. But the thing that I'm, most annoyed about is I told them, and it's not even necessarily that, it's not fixed yet, because it will be fixed and it will just be a BIOS. It's just the fact that, I'm one of the few media that will go out of my way to try and tell all brands about issues, because the way I see it is it's kind of part of my job to try and make sure you lot get a better product. So I've taken a bit of issue with the fact that it has taken too long for something as simple as load line calibration to fix. I've had these type of issues fixed in an afternoon before, after having it reported, and I don't know, it just feels like they're being a bit lackluster. It feels like they're being a bit lazy. It shouldn't have even, in my opinion, have not necessarily been launched, but it should have been tested more before launch, because load line calibration is something that it should just work. Now, I've had these kind of issues with other brands and stuff in the past, and I have, you know, kicked off and said all these sort of things. So it's not like I'm even particularly having an ASUS rant. It's just it's a really simple, basic setting that should just work. How did it even get to me like this? I mean, they're probably going to stop sending me stuff early now because I've had a whinge about it. But you know, when you boil it all down, I did my thing, I tested it, and I've waited as well. I literally, like, I can't do those, I moved on. That's why you got the Hero review at launch, and I pulled the Hero review out of my rectum with late nights to make sure I had content for everyone. But the plan always was to have had these live at launch. So I've done all that. I've done all of what I could. I put it to one side. I waited for the BIOS to be fixed. Now, in the review, I would have said the BIOS, the original BIOS that we got, there was VDroop. Thankfully, you know, new one. It's fixed now. It's the way it should be. It's normally just a tiny little passing comment. And if you listen out for them, you'll pick up on them. But yeah, and it just doesn't. So the whole kickoff is about ASUS don't seem to see a priority in getting the load line calibration fixed on this board. But the problem is I'm reviewing it, and I'm back reviewing it now. And what happened on Monday when it was clear that they hadn't even tested it 2 weeks later, it just got to the point with me where I'm like, I'm not waiting any longer. So my review on them is, and you can go to the OC3D website and look at all of the results. It's all there. You can go and have a look at it. But I didn't overclock it in the end because I do not think, with the load line calibration not working like this, I do not think they're capable of overclocking CPUs at the moment. They're substandard with that BIOS on them at the moment. With that level of VDroop, I would not recommend people overclock, because you're literally having to overclock them so much for the times that it may be under load that you'll literally put in so many more volts through it than you really need to for those few times when it is actually going to be at load. Now, it's not going to droop. If you overclock properly and you actually bench test, you're going to need to do loads. You'll need all those extra volts. But if you're gaming and stuff, you might not need to. But it's just, it should just work is the best way that I can put it, and it doesn't. So the long and short of it is, I mean, as they stand at the moment, I would not recommend you buy them. Now, they will fix it. They're going to see this video. They're going to have a heart attack. They're going to see the written review as well. Like I said, you can click through to go and have a look at that. So they are going to have a heart attack, a coronary stroke. Do you know what I mean? There's going to be much panicking going on, much headless chickens running around trying to get stuff fixed. And it will be fixed. And I would have said that it's going to be fixed next week. But it's just the fact I've had to kind of draw a line in the sand, and that is, I'm not waiting any longer. You've not taken it as a priority. So if you're not taking it as enough of a priority, then why should I be kind enough to wait any longer? Just going to go live with it, and I'm going to tell everyone, because the critical point for me is right now, if you've bought one of these boards, you may not know that the load line calibration is pants and it's drooping all over the place. At least if you tried manually setting it up, that is. The other thing that you can do, I think there's one review out there where they have mentioned VDroop. But go and have a look around, see if you can find any other reviews, and see if they've mentioned it, because I've found 3 and they've overclocked it and they've not even mentioned it. So yeah, doing your job great there, boys. So yeah, the long and short of it is, until they fix that BIOS, if you're thinking about buying one, obviously you can get it, and obviously you can update the BIOS later. That's totally cool. But if it was me right now and it was, do I buy the Strix, don't I buy the Strix? I don't know. I think I probably wouldn't buy the Strix, because as it stands at the moment, it's not that great. Well, it's not that great. It's actually bad. You know, that small thing, when you buy a board like this and you buy an 8700K, the overclocking needs to be bang on. And it is capable, but it's just, you know, that it's just not working the way it should. It should be better. And it's not. So that's my rant. Do you know what I mean? And the thing is I hope you realise how seriously I take telling you about this, because at the end of the day, what I am trying to do is push them to the point that you get a fix quicker. Because And I don't even really like bashing stuff too much, you know what I mean? Because it's, you know, they're all right. You know, they're well-spec boards. I'm not too keen on the silver, if I'm honest, but you get choice. And, you know, they come in at a decent price. You know, they tick a lot of boxes. But it's a waste of time having, you know, ticking lots of boxes when the basics, that are the bits that are holding it all together, are, as far as I'm concerned, aren't good enough for it to even be on sale at the moment. So, you know, at the end of the day, Asus, you're not getting an award. You've got a kick in the gonads. I'm really not happy. And I'm really not happy and it's not because you've ignored me, but it's more the fact that I found out loads of other people have been saying it as well. Like massive e-tailer, a massive system integrator, people that, you know, sell hundreds of your products. And why hasn't it been a priority? There isn't, you know, I've got a lot of the other boards. I know how well the Maximus is working. I know how, you know what I mean? It just seems to be, if it was me and I'd been like, what? The load line calibration's not working. That's not right. We must fix that quick, because it's such a, like, it's the foundations of the board. You just don't sell it like that. It's like, what? So, yeah, anyway, I'm going round in circles and I'm yabbering now. So I've told you that the LLC is not working. In the main review, which you can click underneath, there's no overclocking results, because if I'm completely honest with you, I would not be manually overclocking with this board as a long-term thing. And if you've got it running like stock volts and stuff, to be honest with you, with the way that it's, I've seen the board put in like 1.4 volts through in, just because it's got XMP enabled. That again is something that needs sorting out, because over 1.3 volts is ridiculous. For me to be seeing 1.4 volts, and the problem is what it's doing is it's basically making the board run at 4.7 all the time. That's why it's doing it. And then it's just auto volting all the way up. Well, boys, that needs turning right the way back, because you cannot be putting 1.4 volts through some poor so-and-so's processor that doesn't necessarily understand what's going on. It's just not right. So for the love of days, what you need to do is get the BIOS boys on it and get it fixed. But don't ask me to test it again, because I'm done with the Strix boards now. I will not be going back. I will not be looking at them again, because you've wasted too much of my time already. I am going to go on and do the Strix board, and do you know what I mean? It's likely, the Strix board, the ITX board, it's likely to be something that I'm going, you know, to like. So it's not like I'm going to get all bent up about it and be like, oh, I don't like this one now because I don't like that one. It's not going to be like that. Do you know what I mean? I treat everything fairly. It's just, if you think that you're going to now get me to rebuild those into the rig, why should I put the effort in when you haven't, is basically the way it is. So the Strix is done. It didn't get an award. And at the end of the day, when you think that there's two boards there as well, and the amount of time that I've pretty much wasted and gone back, and yeah, I'm not a happy chappy. So I'm going to be moving on with other stuff. I don't know what board I'm going to be doing next. I've got a few that I do need to get through, but I've got some funky graphic stuff and bits and bobs coming for you now. But don't forget, peeps, you can go and have a look underneath. Go and have a look at the written review. See what I've written there. And also, if you fancy a chat about it, jump on the forums too. But there you go. Asus rant. They don't happen very often. When they do, they're yeah, proper.